been through 2012, 2015, 2018, and now here we are again, ladies and gentlemen. And so, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and Catherin, thank you for being for having COVID and still being with us today. we appreciate that. And without further ado, here's Catherin Turcer.
And also not contaminate you. I think we are so blessed that we have this opportunity to figure out different ways, works around, so we can all be healthy. I thought today that I would take a moment to pause and think about what we've been through in 2023. It has been a long year, filled with more elections than we expected, and a lot of ups and downs. And so, you know, the first thing I always think is, you know, we need to think about, you know, we're in this room together having a lovely brunch, and you're with your friends, and this is an opportunity. I want to have everyone, this is an opportunity for gratitude. So I want you to look at a friend and neighbor, somebody who's next to you, and let them know, you know, how much you appreciate the hard work that they've done this year, how they inspire you. So take a moment and
You're an example for all. You really are.
That was gerrymandered. So, you know, I started my career, I was a social worker, and then when I got, let's frankly, not just burned out, but totally crispy, I was like so burned out, I decided that I was going to do, Jerry, should I stop?
What? No.
Oh, okay, just in case. So I got really burned out, and I decided, okay, I'm going to do something different, and I got this job with Ohio Citizen Action. And many of you are going to be familiar with, I ran the Money in Politics project, and I was always doing money in politics studies. And, you know, I continue to think, you know, role of money in politics, the undue influence of the wealthy. It's an ongoing challenge. But in the late 90s, Terry McCoy said, you're missing a really big piece of the puzzle. Will you come and talk to me? This is Terry McCoy, the League of Women Voters. Will you come and talk to me about gerrymandering? And I was like, 8th grade social studies, gerrymandering? Gerrymandering? And so that was really the beginning of the late 90s, where I had this long conversation with Terry McCoy, and then do many of you remember Peg Rosenfield as well? Just, you know, these two, at this point, they both have passed, but these two strong women who really got me excited and thinking about, what about all of these other structural problems with democracy? And it also, you know, one of the reasons I always reflect back on that is somebody invited us to this work. That much like it took a little while to get my voice to be so that you could all hear it, it takes a while. It's like a snowball. It starts small and it gets bigger and it gets bigger and it gets bigger. And we are at a really exciting moment. And I'm so glad that we're all in this together. So I worked with this guy, Bob Edgar. He was the head of the Ohio Council of Churches. And one of the things that he would always say when we came to meetings, he would say, we are the leaders we have been waiting for. Okay, think about that. A lot of times, we spend our times wishing somebody else was doing something, right? We spend our time thinking, well, why isn't Biden doing this? Or why isn't the Supreme Court doing better? And a lot of times, we're not thinking about our own leadership. And what I think is really beautiful about the League of Women Voters, the League of Women Voters of Ohio, the League of Women Voters of Kent, is that whole thing of, you know, that we are the leaders we have been waiting for. All right, everybody, we are the leaders we have been waiting for. Ready to say it? We are the leaders we have been waiting for. I think it's incredibly important as we think about this past year to think about all that you accomplished. And you should be so proud of yourselves. This was a year of crazy elections. It was about this time last year, right after the election, when Secretary of State Frank LaRose said, oh, you know what we really need to do? We need to make it harder to do citizen initiatives because things are out of control. Now, he never mentioned it when he was campaigning. It came out at an event where he told the Chamber of Commerce they were going to really like it. And it was introduced in what is, frankly called the lame duck session. And so many of you traveled to Columbus, you traveled to the State House to say, well, wait a second. We have had this right since 1912. We have had this right, and what is democracy? A democracy is 50% plus one. That's what democracy is. And so we started that fight. It would be this November, December of last year. And we won, right? We won. Okay, so I think we won. This is a year where we were able to push back, stop an enormous power grab, and ensure that we as citizens of the state of Ohio can come together. We can collect signatures. We can talk to voters. We can put issues directly before the voters. And yes, this takes so many different people, but it clearly took the League of Women Voters. It clearly was essential that we all come together and we all push together. And I think you all should just, take a moment, pat yourself on the back. I mean this literally. You did good. And I think, especially when you get to the end of this, and this has been a long year, and there's a lot of depressing news, but we should all be really focused on the fact that this year, we saved the citizen initiatives. We saved that check on the state legislature. We saved direct democracy. Because we would have had it, meaning it would have been in the Constitution, but we would not have functionally been able to use it. Who's excited about using it? I was going to say, I hope you are all getting excited about actually getting those clipboards out, having those conversations. Because I know when we talk a lot about, August 8th and then August special election, clearly it was intended to address the November 2023 election. It was clearly an attempt to sabotage reproductive rights. It was also an attempt to sabotage redistricting. And so as we think about this past year, we also, as Ohioans, came together, we all voted, and we protected reproductive rights. And so as we think about the next fight, which is the redistricting reform fight, I am so glad that we're all in this together and that we're going to be having these conversations individually with voters. One of the things I think is really amazing, and I'm sorry if my voice is sounding a little less beautiful than it might, there's something amazing about having those conversations one-on-one with voters about what gerrymandering is. Remember 8th grade social studies? Having those conversations, because a good educational process while we're collecting signatures sets us up for a win in November of 2024. It's also important for us to think about, we're going to be able to recruit new volunteers. We're going to have the opportunity to register folks to vote at the same time. And, I just talked about, the November 2023 ballot. 48% of folks participated in that election. Now, that's a lot for an odd numbered year, but it's not even half of the folks who were registered to vote. And so as we think about 2024 and our collecting signatures, our opportunity to register people to vote, to talk to them about voting is really essential. Because we all know, especially League of Women Voters, you all know, hey, it takes a lot for folks not only to understand that they need to vote, but also the commitment to vote and to understand what's at stake. And let's face it, folks realize that the powers that be have made it harder for them to participate. Folks, they know that the system is rigged. And we're thinking about, well, how do you take it and unrig it? And there's a real power in that. Because even the folks who do not vote understand that the system is rigged. They understand that something is manipulated. They may not know what gerrymandering is, but they understand something is not right. And at the end of the day, the manipulation of district lines is the manipulation of elections. It's the manipulation of public policy. It's the manipulation of good government. And it is the manipulation of our democracy. And we are here because we want to fight that. We want to fight that and stop that so that we can participate in truly meaningful elections. And so as we're going through this year, I want to encourage us all to have this vision of democracy. For a lot of us, we know that there is so much cognitive dissonance between what we believe and what we want and what we're experiencing. There shouldn't be cognitive dissonance there. We should have a democracy that works for all of us. We should have a democracy where our voices are heard. We should have a democracy where we can talk with one another and come up with reasonable solutions and have functional government. And because of this shared vision, we decided that we're going to go back to the ballots. Well, I'm one of those that always say, citizen initiatives are incredibly hard work. No, I'm going to take a moment to tell you about 2005. I know, you're all like, we're in 2023, 2024, but I'm going to take us back to 2025. 2005, see, I'm really good. So in 2005, we had the Reform Ohio Now Citizen Initiative. Do any of you remember collecting signatures, talking to people about Reform Ohio Now? Hands up, because that I can see. Reform Ohio Now. Hi, everybody. So, y'all remember how we got our butts kicked? Oh my gosh. So that was money in politics. That was redistricting reform. That was creating a bipartisan board of elections rather than having the Secretary of State. And, right after the CoinGate scandal, it seemed really clear we could actually win. But we didn't, because just incredible amounts of money spent against it. But what did we get out of that? Do you all remember in 2005? We lost. Boy, did we lose. But what we got was the state legislature in August of 2005 decided that the most popular thing in the whole proposals that were out there in the Citizen Initiative was early vote. In other words, they said, if we get together and we pass 30 days of early vote and no fault absentee, well then we can tell people they don't need to vote for Reform Ohio Now proposals. And so even though we lost, what did we gain? We gained early vote. We gained no fault absentee voting. And so when you look back and you think about kind of the history of reform and the history of these efforts, it's important to realize as we're going forward that it's been slow, it's been incremental, but we have made some massive changes through signature gathering, even when we were not winners. Even when we weren't able to do we won, we still created an enormous victory for Ohio voters. So I'm going to take us in a slightly different direction for a minute as you're thinking about, hey, we're getting our signature books, we're going to do a bunch of collection, we're getting trained, we're having conversations. We are persistent. Because don't forget, gerrymandering has been around since 1812. 1812. So the thing to remember is, you know that gerrymandering cartoon that has the salamander? You were 8th grade social studies? Yeah, gerrymandering cartoon. That was a map that was approved by Elbridge Gerry. Now, Gerry becomes Jerry of gerrymandering. The mander is because the publishers of the Boston Gazette thought it looked like a salamander. And so it became gerrymander. Okay. 1812. And I want us to take a moment to think about this. Elbridge Gerry signed the Declaration of Independence. Elbridge Gerry was a vice president under James Madison. That is how entrenched gerrymandering is. And we have decided together to take on this enormous systemic challenge. And this is our time. We've laid the groundwork through a lot of different efforts. And so I think it's important to think about, many of you will know Joan Lawrence, former state rep. She was executive director of the League of Women Voters, long-term league member from, at this point, Columbus. She led that first campaign in 1981. So we have been at this together for a really long time. And 2024 is our year. 2024 is our year, and I want us to think a little bit about, what it's going to take, and to make sure that we're saying, I encourage you all to say thank you to one another, but also to think about the people that have passed, like Dave Horn, who worked really hard on those first reforms in the late, in that 1981, late 70s, early 80s. And also worked really hard to get the redistricting competitions going. So there are folks from all over the state who have been doing this for a long time. And when we're thinking about systemic reform, I always think it's really helpful for us to take a moment and step further back and think about what else is going on. Okay. So what else happened in 2023? That makes you think about this whole thing and the whole conversation? I think the thing that makes 2023 a really interesting year isn't just the fight so that we could make sure we had our citizen initiative rights. It's also early this year, former Speaker Larry Householder was sentenced to 20 years. Now, something that can feel like that was a long time ago. He was sentenced to 20 years for RICO charges, and basically because he used dark money to, essentially build his team in the state house and to actually stop a referendum. In other words, the ability of citizens to collect signatures to stop a bad bill. And we're still feeling the consequences of House Bill 6. And we should be thinking about kind of the role of money in politics, the role of the legislature, and how the legislature needs us to take on this fight. This is a fight about power. This is a fight about who has power. We want the voters to have power. We want the voters to have a say. We want to ensure that we go the direction that Ohioans want to go, not the direction of the wealthy, not the direction of the well-connected, not the direction of a political party. We want the voters to determine the course and direction for the entire state. And so when I think about Householder, and I think about what that all means, you put that together with the fact that they haven't done anything at the State House to address dark money. They have not done anything to ensure that they don't have a repetition of the scandal. And, we're going to go back right now to redistricting. I think when we think about what happened, that we worked really hard in 2015 and 2018 to ensure that there were good rules in the Ohio Constitution. In the Ohio Constitution, you can find prohibitions on gerrymandering. You can find rules that keep communities together. You can find rules that require transparency. We did the right thing. We put good rules into the Ohio Constitution. What we found is that elected officials, including the governor, auditor, and secretary of state, and some legislative leaders, we found that they didn't care about the voters. Now, we found that they did not feel accountable to the Ohio Constitution. We found that they didn't really care what the Ohio Supreme Court said. Slow-moving constitutional crisis, right? These folks are drunk on power. So what do you do with drunks? You take away their keys. And that means we're taking away the map making, and we're giving it to a panel of citizens. 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, 5 independents, or unaffiliated. Because clearly these folks cannot be trusted. They have proven they cannot be trusted. And this is the kind of thing where we gave them a real shot here. But they didn't pay attention to what was in the Ohio Constitution. So now we need to take that map making away, and we need to pick up our pens and get out in communities, even when it's cold, because we are going into this map making, where we're all going to have to wear our hats and go to some tree lightings and hang out in front of a local library when it's not exactly warm. But we are all going to begin signature collection right now. And so I hope as you are leaving this brunch, you're thinking about, well, how is it that you're going to work on ending gerrymandering in 2024? How you're going to encourage voters to participate in 2024? And there's so many different ways. Clearly, there's a signature collection. There can be the giving speeches, giving talks. There are all sorts of, how can I put this, paperwork kinds of things. There are also, like, if you're somebody who's like a techie, the sign-up genius, so that you can get people, to attend an event, and you know who's going to be there. If you're about spreadsheets, there are all sorts of ways to help coordinate people so that they get the materials they need. It is a little bit like holding a wedding all over the state. It's this enormous paperwork effort, and we need you all. And so, I'm going to say to you again, what do you think I'm going to say? I'm going to say to you again, we are the leaders we have been waiting for. We are the leaders we have been waiting for. And I want to thank you all so very, very much. And with that, Sherry, do you want to see if folks have questions?
I am. I'm coming back. So questions for Catherin? We've got one. Yes?
I have 2. One is AI seems like a natural solution to this gerrymander issue.
In what regard?
Well, I mean, if there's 5 Republicans and there's 5 Democrats, can't a computer program figure this out better than anybody else?
Well, so the question is, can a computer program figure this out? I already know that answer, but I'll let you go ahead and answer that, Catherin.
So I have to say, it would be lovely if you could just have a computer program figure out the district lines and you could just leave it at that. That would be an elegant solution. Unfortunately, have you ever heard the phrase garbage in, garbage out? Okay, so this is the problem you could have folks that program the computer and manipulate the districts, right? That way, or you could have somebody hack it. You could also completely miss information that's really incredibly important. And this is because when it comes to the map making, there's the focus on keeping communities together, right? There's the focus on not manipulating for partisanship. There's also the focus on, when you think about compactness and that is so important, but that can be a problem when you start to think about minority representation or opportunity districts for African Americans. So one of the things that we found is that computers can provide, like the supercomputers can quickly identify which districts are very gerrymandered, but they aren't a perfect proxy for balancing all of the different things. And one of the things that I think is really important is the Citizens Not Politicians proposal focuses on drawing the maps based on community input, so that there are lots and lots of public conversations, public comments, where there's an opportunity to try to balance all of those different needs. It is not the elegant solution of a computer, but there is a real beauty of citizens coming together with good public input to draw district lines that reflect communities so that our voting districts reflect us.
Second question?
No, thank you so much. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I got this in the Akron Beacon this past week, and I was wondering who paid for it and why.
Catherin, so she got this in the Akron Beacon,
What is it?
and it is a description of the final General Assembly District Plan as adopted and revised by the Ohio Redistricting Commission on September 29th, 2023, and she wanted to know who paid for it.
It came from where?
It came from the Akron Beacon Journal.
It was an insert.
It was an
turn to the back
insert.
sheet. Like, I don't actually know who. Oh, I guess I do know what. Okay, so one of the things that happens when they do new district lines is that the newspapers have to report out basically the new information so that it becomes available. So this happens where newspapers will, you'll notice like public meeting notices in newspapers. So state government will pays for changes in voting districts that are put into newspapers. Now, I have not seen something kind of that detailed, but the state government, as part of the Ohio Redistricting Commission, must have actually paid for it. It's possible the Secretary of State's office paid for it, but it's probably not a bad idea. I think the challenges that we have with the district lines, because they can end up being so manipulated, seeing them on paper, sometimes it's really hard to actually see that this is my district, not that district. At this point, by 2023, we're better off looking at these maps actually on a computer to identify which district we're actually in.
Good, thank you. Terry?
So what type of misinformation or arguments will be made by the people who oppose this?
Can you hit what dis and misinformation will the opposition provide?
Well, you know what? One of the things I do think is funny is we kind of know from previous campaigns what they'll use. So I don't know if you remember in 2012, they said things like this: "We don't know who these people will be. They'll be faceless bureaucrats. We don't know how much it'll cost. It could cost unlimited amounts of money, and we can't hold these people accountable because they're not elected." So the other thing that they can say is, "I don't know about you, but I happen to know there's politics in everything. This will be just as political." The other thing they'll probably say is something along the lines of, "Aren't you a bunch of Democrats that are just a bunch of sore losers?" The unlimited amounts of money one in 2012 was hilarious. I don't know if you remember the ballot language in 2012. they mention taxpayer funding at the top of the language, and then at the bottom of the ballot board language include different ways taxpayer money would be spent on the Citizens Commission. Which brings me to, we do know that games are going to be played throughout this, and that the criticisms that are made are not necessarily the ones we would anticipate, because we don't necessarily think that way.
Building on what you just said, I think like what we really need is some really clear talking points, non-partisan talking points about why this matters on both sides of the aisle. So like an elevator speech and talking points.
Awesome, good. January 11th. Be there, January 11th. We will have all of that for you. Jane?
Well, my question was along that line. I think Catherin, thank you for coming, made an important point that as we do petitions, we educate. What are some of the ways you would recommend we do that? I mean, we have ideas, as Sherry and Mary Ann have said, but what would be some of your suggestions?
So I think one of the things that is the easiest is saying something that sounds really simple, that we're talking about the manipulation of voting districts, manipulating elections, and that it's time to stop the manipulation by creating an independent citizens commission, because we all deserve to participate in meaningful elections. You know, why am I here? I'm here collecting signatures because I want to ban gerrymandering. I don't get what you're talking about. I want to make sure that our votes count. I don't want to have those voting districts manipulated. So a lot of times when you're having those conversations, those folks are going to fill you into how much they actually know. And so, they'll get, oh, okay, I kind of get this. I also think sometimes we say districts a lot, or we'll say state house districts or congressional districts. I think we should get in the habit of saying voting districts. And the reason we should say voting districts is it highlights, well, why do we care about this? We're not caring about this because we care about maps, right? I mean, we don't care about maps. What we care about is voting. What we care about is we want to have good representation, good accountability.
What about the student vote? They have a not very good record in voting. What? They did better this time, at least in Canada. How can we make it meaningful that the students need to vote?
Can you hear, Catherin?
So the question was about student voting.
Yes.
So one of the things that was clear in 2023 is that students were much more active this year. Despite the obstacles that were in their way, they were much more active. What is clear to me is that students understand that something they care about is on the line, they're going to vote. And so, when you're having conversations with students, it is worth talking to them about the decisions that are made at the State House. And the manipulation of district lines manipulates elections, which manipulates public policy. And so, for example, there have been crazy kinds of conversations about how they should address diversity, equity, inclusion, teaching, and how the university needed to, really rein in all of their information about our history of racism. All of those kinds of things come about because these folks aren't accountable to us. If they were, they would understand that we want to have good, accountable government, good education, and that at the end of the day, all this hot button, trans talk and all this crazy that's happening at the State House would be much more functional and would address students' need. And for that matter, it would address the cost of education if voters actually had accountable government. At the end of the day, so many of our elected officials are tied to wealthy special interests, including banks, including the financial industry, that it makes it very hard for students because of their student loans. And so just encouraging them to understand about the accountability here is important. And I do think, students often say that they care about voting, but they don't actually know how to. Like, when you think about it, all of us would have gone to the post office when we were kids. All of us would have purchased stamps, at the grocery store. I don't know how many of you have college-age kids, but I know my daughter once said to me, I don't have any idea where you get postage stamps.
Oh my God.
All right, really, I have failed as a mother.
My kid didn't know.
You understand what I'm saying is that there are obstacles to voting that are easy to navigate if you actually understand how they work. And why would you understand how they work when you're 18? So it's up to us to be having these conversations, doing what we can, and then listen, because this is the other thing. I'm giving you information from students I've talked to and polling I've seen and information I've read about. But once we're having these conversations in community, we're going to better understand, and we can think about doing our trainings and our voter registrations drives differently based on the information we learn as we collect signatures. And hopefully we'll get super smart and we will invite students to the party.
Thank you. Yes.
Next question.
Yeah.
Catherin, from your vantage point, over the umbrella of all the campaigning that was done for these last couple of campaigns, how much should we be helping members use their social media to get people to places where they can sign petitions or find out more about it? What did you see? How did you see it help?
So this is a good question. Now, social media can be just simple, like, I send a little note to a state legislator, and maybe it makes a difference if there's a ton of them, but a lot of times it doesn't get a good traction. But using your social media to tell others where they can sign, that is really, truly meaningful. Getting that information out there. So even if somebody has already signed and they see that post, it reminds them, I haven't told my friend, I haven't told my neighbor, I could share this. And then you're building it up. It's that, one voice doesn't get us very far. One post doesn't get us very far, but one post becomes 2 posts, becomes 50 posts. And so we should be using social media to encourage people to sign. Now, the campaign does not have this yet, but it's my understanding that they are going to have basically a place where you could click and you could actually find a location near you. And so whatever we can do, just keep highlighting the momentum. This is the other thing. I highly encourage you to take lots and lots and lots of pictures. Now, the reason for that is the social media posts that do the best at this point are ones that have people in them, that have a face on them. It's not some, thing where I sat down and I made something in Canva or I made something on Adobe. It shows there are people out there, there are individuals that are out there voting. So I encourage you, get really friendly with that phone of yours. Take a bunch of pictures. Sometimes you have to be a little bit too close to get really good ones. Pictures with clipboards, pictures with, your t-shirts on or your button, anything League Lady buttons that you all have. And I shouldn't tease you, but I know, how many of you are wearing a League of Women Voters button right now? Hands up. Okay, so this is the other thing that you can do. Making sure I know I have a Christmas one, but making sure when you leave the house, believe me, I'm not leaving the house today. When you leave the house that you have your League button on is a way, yes, it's like social media. It's like, I'm somebody you could stop and you can actually ask about redistricting. It is important to wear that, have it on your coat, have it on your sweater. It is all of these little things add up. And just think of it like my shouting, on campus at Kent State is not going to get us anywhere. But my wearing a button and you wearing a button and you doing a social media post, it all ends up snowballing and making a difference.
I think we can all take a lesson from the Parks District on those buttons, by the way. So, if any of you didn't see a sign or you didn't leave the house. The Umberto.
I hate to be pessimistic and defeatist, but as George Friday said, it's just a fact, ma'am. Back in 2022, when they were redistricting and with all gerrymandered, it went to the Supreme Court, which said, no, those are illegal, those are unconstitutional, change it. They said, Constitution be damned. Supreme Court be damned, we'll do what we want, and they got away with it. Now they have a Supreme Court that says, oh, Republicans, whatever you want to do for the next 7 years. How can we overcome that kind of system? Thank you.
So one of the things that is super clear is that we can address gerrymandering, but it's only one part of the puzzle, right? It's only one thing that we're fixing. So we do need to be thinking about, well, what can we do so that both the U.S. Supreme Court and the Ohio Supreme Court are fairer, more reflective, more accountable, that, everything from, have good codes of conduct, that they recuse themselves when it's appropriate. There are things that we need to do to address the court. We certainly need to address dark money in the U.S. Supreme Court and the Ohio Supreme Court. So as we think about, the court that we have now, I get that no one in this room, or for that matter in my house, is going to be working on getting a specific candidates elected, but we should be encouraging people to participate in those Supreme Court elections and really highlighting how incredibly important the state court is. One of the things that we do have coming up on December 18th, it's 6 p.m. That's a Monday, December 18th. This is one that the League of Women Voters is co-sponsoring. It is organized by Common Cause of Ohio and the Fair Districts Court Alliance. Sorry. I actually started the thing and it's changed names so many times I don't remember. But it'll be really super interesting. This is a conversation about the Supreme Court ethics and the scandals and what we can actually do to address the U.S. Supreme Court. So I encourage you all to participate in that. You might remember in 2022, so last year, we had this thing called Judge the Ads that was really focused on trying to follow the money when it came to the Ohio Supreme Court races and actually looking at the different ads. So, one of the things that I think is really important is we need our eye on the prize for this year. This year, we are gerrymandering warriors. We are taking them on. This is our fight. But there are other fights. There's so many other fights. It's good to be single-minded for a period of time, but then we have to step back and think about all the other stuff that we have to tackle. And clearly the court system is unfair, unjust, and racist. And we need to take that on. And it's really hard, people.
Janine?
Catherin, can you speak to how it would look for an independent commission with 5 independents, 5 Democrats, and 5 Republicans selected? How would that evolve?
Did you hear that?
So is the question how you determine who were Democrats, Republicans, and independents?
No. In other words, if to have an independent commission, it suggested to have 5 independents, 5 Democrats, and 5 Republicans. How would they be selected? How do you see that happening?
So this is actually interesting. I'd encourage you all to check out the amendment and the amendment summary, which is a good summary. So when you get your petition booklets, check that out. You can also go to Citizens, Not Politicians. The way that it'll work is that retired judges, Democrats, Republicans, There'll be a panel of them, and they will review the applications. So the thing that's important here is that, for example, Michigan got close to 15,000 applications to be on their Citizens Commission. So you need a body that will actually review them. So this will be a panel of retired judges, Democrats, Republicans, evenly. How will you know they're Democrats, Republicans? They would have run in those primaries that are Democrats, Republicans. That's how you know. But they'll go through and identify the folks that they believe, are up for the job, have good information, good knowledge, serious people, all of the things that you might imagine that they would look for. Do they have special skills? There are a variety of things they'll look for. They'll narrow that down to 45. Of the 45, they will select them. Basically, imagine them being put in a hat. And they'll pull out 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, 2 independents, and then those folks will select the remaining so that you will get to 15. So the idea is to make sure that it is as buffered from people who are elected officials as possible. And also, we all know that things that are random, you can actually somehow do some random thing and end up with people that both live in Kent, right? Like, it's random, but somehow it's not geographically diverse. And so the commissioners that are initially selected will go through the remaining, folks that are in that hat and say, oh yeah, we definitely want this person. We have nobody in Southwest Ohio. Oh, we definitely want this person. We don't have good representation of African Americans. Oh no, wait a second. We don't have good representation down in Southwest Ohio. So they'll go through that process. Now, the other thing that I think is really cool about this is all of this has to happen in public. And so when folks are interviewed to be on this commission, any of us could watch it. We could go there. We could also, if we're like, I'm sorry, that Sherry Rose, she says she's an independent, but I happen to know she is one of those big maggots. So it isn't, we'll have an opportunity to comment on people, which I think is important because we like to think that everybody wouldn't try to game the system, but there will be people who will try to game the system, right? And so the public will have a responsibility of watching and really paying attention. I hope that answered it. So it's detailed, but it's detailed so that we have truly independent commission.
And it is, for those of you that have seen it, it is like 37 pages long. So have at it, Janine. All right. Yeah. That's why that summary is awesome. Okay. The other questions. Wonderful. Well, please join me. And once again, thank you.
We are the leaders we've been waiting for.
So thank you so much, Catherin. We do have a gift for you. So next time I'm down in Columbus, I'll make sure that we have lunch, so that we will give that to you. So thank you. Feel better.
Yes.
And I'm sure that we will see you again soon.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for